today I'm going to talk about Myrrh's effects on the etheric field, but also about how she is the high priestess, because I think that Myrrh is probably the most important essential oil that you will learn if you want to do subtle aromatherapy, vibrational aromatherapy, if you want to work on the aura and on the energy fields, but also to be able to help to do transition work. So when I talk about the etheric fields, this is a good description of how I work with them. And if you decide at a later date to come and do aura training with me, this is one of the diagrams that we work with. So first of all, you can see that inside there is an electromagnetic field. And I think quite often people will talk about the biofield as if the aura and the etheric field are the biofield. But I think the biofield really is only a small part of the etheric field. So if you're not sure what the biofield is it's a proven electromagnetic field that happens because of the interactions of the cells. Cells in the body all sort of throw out an electric byproduct of their work, and so then we have this like electro field around, which we know as the biofield. The problem with the biofield is the explanation does not leave any space for the spiritual aspect. So when we're talking about the aura, what we say is the aura is the seat of the spirit, and the spirit is one's incarnation of the soul in this particular manifestation. And the easy way of saying that is who you are, your character, your personality, and your collective thoughts and experiences that have been acquired over time. But also the seat of the soul. The soul is the spirit through many different incarnations. And what's interesting when you study the etheric field over time is quite often you will find things that exist in the outermost etheric bodies that seem to pertain to something different to this manifestation. So, for example, it might be collective consciousness through a family. In particular, you might see the trauma of the Jews, for example, or trauma of slavery. And while the people who you are talking to were alive in it, obviously their experiences of living with people who have been directly associated with it, it does influence their personality, but you also see it reflected in their etheric field. And I'm not sure that the biofield explains that in a particular way. So the reason why I think that that's really important is because Myrrh is like a needle and a thread. It stitches where things are ripped. Now, when we are doing aura healing, what we tend to do is to use a diagram like this to actually douse or feel it with our hands. Quite a lot of people who, after they've been working with the aura for a while, can sense differences in temperature, differences in texture, and be able to say, that doesn't feel right there. There's a tear there, or it's become frayed or ragged. And those kind of situations you tend to see, it's very unlikely that you would see somebody who had a tear in the aura be also vital and like vibrant, because those kind of tears tend to disturb their etheric fields, but also disturb the vitality that goes into their body. So for example, I will give a personal example. If you've ever read my Spikenard book, I talk about a particular time when I encountered something so terrifying to me that I felt like all of my aura was like the cat, you know, the cat with the spiky cartoon cat image. That's what I felt like my aura was like. And Spikenard was able to smooth that down and help the trauma to shift out of my etheric body so that I could deal with the trauma. But I was left with a definite deficit in the mental body. That excuse me, it was as if the body had tried to filter the information. It was too overwhelming for me, and it had got stuck there. So it had become dense, but then other areas around it had become ragged. And the very best healer for that, just like the best skin healer in the physical body, the best etheric healer is myrrh. So we can use that in one of two ways. We can either use it as an essential oil, and to do that, what we would do is put it onto the hands and to smooth it over. And really, a lot of aura healing is done with the mind and knowing the practices of how to tune into that. But it's like as if you've got glue on your hand that stitches the neck curtain back together. And the other thing that can be used is myrrh incense. You would obviously break that down a lot smaller and put it on some charcoal, but then the fragrance of the myrrh obviously goes to the mind, but the actual molecules and the vibration of the myrrh is really good for just healing that alignment up so that everything starts to stabilize again. So when we're thinking about the medical astrology of myrrh, it is ruled by the moon, and that helps me to come to what I wanted to talk to you about. I've got a feeling this is going to be back to front, and if it is, I'm really sorry, but you should be able to tell that this says the High Priestess on the bottom. So these are the Rider-Waite tarot cards, but the High Priestess is the card number 2 or the third card in the major arcana, and each tarot card tells a story about the evolution of the soul. So the Fool starts, then the Magician takes over, and then the High Priestess. Now you'll notice that the High Priestess has the moon, which I say is the rulership of the moon over myrrh, but also she wears the moon. And you might notice how she sits in front of a veil, and the veil is covered in pomegranates. So you might think, oh, okay, this is starting to feel familiar to me. The story of the pomegranates is Persephone, isn't it? Down in the underworld, how she's trapped down there by Hades, who has kidnapped her and taken her down, and he tricks that she has to stay there because she's eaten some of the pomegranates. So we're starting to see, okay, that's the world, the veil between the worlds. But look further past the veil, and you're doing a very myrrh thing when you do that. When you look past the veil, you'll notice that there is water, and that is the water element behind. And we wonder, well, is it an ocean? Is it a river? It looks nice and clear. The sky is clear. So this is a peaceful place beyond the veil. And of course, the veil is the veil between the worlds. So you can start to see how that is how myrrh is used. It's used as like a psychopomp oil. But also, let's think for a second, let's change her personality a little and give her a slightly different book to be in. And if she's in the Bible, and we have 2 divine feminine energies within the New Testament, we can see she kind of looks like Mary. It looks like she's wearing the cross. Actually, the Christian cross is longer at the bottom than the top. So this is the 4 corners of the earth that you can see on her top. But she does kind of look like Mary. And we think about how Mary was given myrrh for the baby Jesus. But then also we might think of Mary Magdalene. And also the Virgin Mary, remember, was also at the crucifixion and also was there to embalm Jesus's body with the myrrh. And so we see them standing at the doorway before he is put in the tomb, the embalming. So we can see how myrrh, the practice of myrrh, takes us into a different place that is other, that exists at the transitions between life and death, at birth and death and rebirth. We notice too that the High Priestess sits between two columns, and these are Jehim and Boaz, which are actually the pillars from the Temple of Solomon. And this is the point of transition. And so myrrh is able to allow us to look through the portals to the other worlds. This is the place of wisdom. This is the place of the other worlds. Now, as we go from there, I want to tell you that I was visited by a butterfly in my dream, who told me a new thing about myrrh that I didn't know or I hadn't articulated before. So I'm going to share that, even though it's probably going to make me seem completely mad. But what she told me was that the butterfly knows more about metamorphosis and transition than any other creature, because when the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, or maybe it's a cocoon, I can never quite remember which one's butterfly and which one's moth. When they go into the chrysalis, what happens is they just disintegrate completely into this primordial goo. And thank you to Dr. Joy Bowles, who spent many hours talking to me about being in the goo. So we've thought a lot about the goo between us, she and I. But this goo is nothing. It is neither caterpillar nor butterfly. It's just goo. It's just thick and sticky like myrrh. And from this dead thing, this thing that has ceased to exist, it no longer exists, to this thing that will come to be, is infinite possibility. And what the butterfly told me is, within the etheric field, it being collective consciousness, exists everything that ever existed, everything that is, and everything that will come to be. In other words, the ability to tune into any possibility from the past, from the present, from the future. To be able to look through the columns of the High Priestess. And the reason for that is because it has profound effects on these two outer bodies. Now, where what we were talking about the other day, rose and angelica seed have, angelica root, have really profound sort of effects from a Christian vibration. Myrrh surprisingly does not. It has the vibration of like Arabia and Muslim, and in some ways feels like it shouldn't be touched by the infidel. And so this might be why you can never really read about it on its own. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a lot written in Islam that we haven't seen, but it exists on a plane that sees more than what is written. So from a magical point of view, we would say staring into the void, scrying in the crystal ball, or taking downloads from whatever source is coming through. And this is, of course, the realm of Milady. She is the beacon that draws, like the antenna that draws down wisdom from. Where does she seems to be dissolving into the water. She has the moon at her feet rather than her head, so that implies that she is up there. That's another kind of Virgin Mary imagery as well, that she has the moon beneath her. But also, she holds, it says here, Torah. So that is obviously Hebrew. But if we were to think about her from an ancient Greek perspective, and when we see that there are pomegranates, we suggest that we should. What this role represents is the sacred law. And the sacred law is called Thesmophoros, which is one of the Melissa tradition festivals, where the women were sat upon Vitex Agnus Castus leaves and were given the sacred law. And so this ability to sit and receive and to know that any given time we are in the betwixt and the between state. I think that's really important, because sometimes we can feel like we are completely stuck. And if you have got essential oils and you have a Myrrh essential oil, you'll probably know that stuck is very much a Myrrh word. Quite often you can't get the top of the bottle off, can you? And the way to do that is to warm, to sit, and to have patience. And so Myrrh has this profound effect on the etheric field, where it opens it and allows for more information to come through. Now that seems very magical, and it is very magical. That's a very magical practice, piece of information. But if you imagine that somebody has repressed memories, has a sense of, this is one of my mum's words and it never makes sense to me, but being restive. Being restive means restless. I don't know how that even makes the same word, but kind of never feeling like they can settle, feeling like something is going on behind their back, behind their the scenes. All of those things are brought through when the etheric body's open to become larger and allow more information to come through. I wish I'd got some paper. Have you seen that kind of paper that's been like sliced through, that you pull it and you can see the hexagons forming? I need to get some of that, don't I? Because that's exactly the effect that I want to be able to portray, almost like a fan opening out, or the butterfly opening its wings, that suddenly huge amounts of space becomes available for other knowledge that feels like they can't quite get in. So from a mind, body, spirit perspective, we would say that it specifically works on the physical body, of course, the first etheric body, because it's so good for the skin, it's so good for the respiratory system. It's just a great oil, isn't it? But then also it has a profound effect on the emotional body, of course, because it's also like two ends of the spectrum. It's almost like joy and sorrow, and that is what you get. You get this beautiful like aphrodisiac effect, that it's euphorically joyful, but also we use it, it's just the time of the sorrowful times, and Myrrh sits right in between the two. But then also we definitely see it coming through on these outer levels, and of course it would work on the divine level. Why else would we see it so much in the Bible? But also here, this next level, and when we're talking about karma, we might say death, birth, death, rebirth, but we might also see the accumulated acts of goodness, of how we work in this world, and this information coming through here. But also here on the astral body, it's extremely good for being able to lift us out of the physical body, to be able to see, almost as if we're looking down upon our problems or down upon our situation. For me, when I'm working with Myrrh, quite often I will find that it's not really a sleep oil, but if I've been using or working with the resin, the next night quite often I will see, we have almost like out of body experience in my dreams. I will go to different places, and sometimes it will be going to the future, sometimes it will be going to the past, and I'll see things that are completely unrelated to here and now. So it's like it moves the boundaries right out. So I don't know whether that will be helpful to you or not, but if you are ever doing any kind of magical work and you want to bring the divine feminine in, and you want to be able to like embody the high priestess, then this is your girl. And that is Myrrh's effects on the etheric bodies.